I asked some questions earlier, Robert, that they said I needed you to ask.
You
So
call
I
me Bob.
needed to ask you.
You can call me Bob.
Bob? Okay, hi, Bob.
Hey Karen, if you could keep speaking the microphone rather than side to side, keep back there.
Okay.
So, Karen, as a matter of semantics, I'm going to ask you to ask the questions to me, but ask Bob's going to answer them a little bit.
Okay.
In terms of that, just logistically, if you address them to the board, then we'll defer appropriately to him.
Okay.
As a matter of semantics.
So the first question that I had was back in 2010, Joe Nolan had sent a letter to the Skolecki's basically saying that in order to alleviate the flooding due to the grading that they've done, the improvements to the property and the driveway, that they would accept them putting in a berm and then would follow up if the issue didn't resolve based on the Stormwater Management Act. I want to know if the Skolecki's were ever contacted to follow through with putting the pipes under the driveway.
I don't know the answer to that.
Well, maybe we could ask Mr. Nolan to, was the characterization of your statements entirely accurate? Because we don't want any misstatements to.
I have our letters if you'd like
I
to read
understand, but
them.
sometimes the phraseology is a little different.
The initial letter generated a meeting. That meeting generated an agreement by Mr. Skolecki to do some additional work at the back of his property, which he did. From that point on, I was really not involved in
And
it.
under the Stormwater Management Act, was that all that we were able to ask him to do?
Yes.
Because I know our abilities were limited at that time under that act, and that was one of the problems.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm confused. First of all, you said you did additional work. You asked for a berm, and you said 2 pipes underneath, and then you said if it didn't resolve the problem, you would follow up. Are you saying then that you never followed up with the Skolecki's after I repeatedly said the flooding was still existing?
So, Bob, how do you want to answer that?
Well, I don't know the answer to that because I wasn't there, but there's a balance here between an active matter that's in litigation and being practical and trying to answer your questions. So you're in litigation with the Skolecki's in court on this very issue.
And we know the Skolecki's are $1 million in foreclosure and haven't paid their mortgage in 7 years. They failed on their first attorney, which had to sue them. Now they failed on their second attorney, and they just withdrew from counsel.
Okay, but
So that doesn't do anything for me.
well, I wanted to would you let me finish what I was going to say? Because I wrote a very extensive letter to your attorney that I hope you have a copy of. And I tried to explain everything in that letter to the reasonable satisfaction of what I was able to investigate, what our staff was able to investigate, and I rendered the opinion that you actively litigated this case and testified at 2 hearings on the matter. One was the initial preliminary injunction hearing. In fact, there were 2 times you testified in court. And at both of those matters were resolved not in your favor. They were resolved in favor of the defendant, the Skolecki's. One by dismissal of the application for a preliminary injunction, which means you didn't prove your burden. And the second one was a motion for summary judgment, which your then attorneys filed, and you were denied that. So you, in my opinion, in litigation in which the court heard your testimony, your sworn testimony, the court disagreed with the assertions that you're now making against the township. Back then, whenever you filed that, I think it was 2012, I'm not encouraging you to do this, but you had an opportunity to join the township as an additional defendant back then. You chose not to do that. You lost the case, and now you're asking to find the township liable. Because what you testified to under oath in that case is that it was the Skolecki driveway that caused all the problem. That's what you said under oath.
Okay,
You were cross-examined on that point.
okay.
And
So
then-
first of all, no, sorry to interrupt you. I was there, okay?
I read it.
I'm sure did you read that the whole next day and a half where I spent my money because engineers were arguing whether or not my plan that I spent $3,500 for or not would work, which is not the place you argue that. The judge is not an engineer. That was not the point of the whole case. The case was who did it, who's responsible, and who should fix it. So I don't want to talk about the quality of the lawyers that I had because it was a joke. They came with pictures you couldn't even see. When you talk about the flooding started because of the fact that he graded it towards me. And even Joe Nolan admits in his letter that it was graded towards my property, that it created a bowl effect, and because of the continuous improvement of the property and then damming it with a driveway. And he cites the township where the Stormwater Management Act, and that property, yes, he did, in 2 letters. And it makes a lot of sense because other lawyers have said the same thing. So why are you as a lawyer contradicting what Joe has said in his own letters?
Because I made my own analysis.
Okay, so then your engineer is wrong.
No, I didn't say that. And you know, I'm really not going to get to
I don't want to get into a battle either, but it's really, really stinks.
You've interrupted me every time I've tried to finish a sentence. And we're not going to have a productive dialogue. I'm all for being able to have a dialogue, but you got to let me finish before you interrupt me. You interrupted me 3 times already. What I was trying to tell you is that you lost in court.
I didn't lose in court, it's still open.
Oh, okay. Well, you lost 2 aspects of the case in court. You lost the motion for summary judgment, and you lost your application for a preliminary injunction based upon your complaints and your testimony. You lost. You may have joined the township as an additional defendant in 2012. You didn't do that. It's not the township's liability, in my opinion, based upon what I've read. If you would like to submit a damage claim to the township, if you read the last sentence of the letter that I wrote to your attorney on Monday, if you'd like to read that last sentence and make a damage claim to the township, feel free to do it. We're not going to litigate this matter here.
I agree with that. It's not really that I'm looking to see whether or not the township is liable. It wasn't discovered that the engineering plan, plot plan, the inspections weren't done. It wasn't evident until after the case that there was such negligence on behalf of the township. And that's where it starts. If the township doesn't collect all the right documentation, architectural plans or anything, how are you guys supposed to know what was coming my way? So it started with the negligence of the township. The Scaleckis took advantage of that, and to this day, they still haven't even been called on any of the other violations that I mentioned 10 years ago.
Well, that's not what you said in court.
Because we didn't know that the file was empty at that point. It wasn't until I met with Tom and Ryan years later that I saw it was empty.
Well, as you said, the case is still open. You can choose to do as you can choose to do. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You have a capable attorney. I would suggest you talk to that attorney and ask him about what you just suggested. Read that last sentence again in my letter. If you have a damage claim to present to the township, present the damage claim to the township. We'd be obligated to forward it to our liability carrier, and we'll deal with it that way.
I really appreciate that, because I appreciate that that's where this is going to end up. But to me, it's really not about liability. It's about responsibility and accountability. And nobody here has accepted accountability or responsibility as a township. That's what's upsetting. Liability is everything somebody's hiding behind that I have to spend more money around.
Jim?
Get bigger.